Shirley Temple got her first role when she was 3 years old, and whenever she misbehaved, she had to sit on a block of ice. She faced a lot of abuse and sexual harassment. Judy Garland was drugged so she could stand in front of the camera for up to 72 hours straight. She became addicted to pills and died at the age of 47 from an accidental overdose. Gary Coleman once said, "I would not give my first 15 years to my worst enemy." He had to sue his own parents for his money, tried to take his own life, had a lot of legal troubles, and died more or less broke at 42. Brooke Shields started out at 11 months old, and she was 9 the first time she was publicly called a sex symbol. Drew Barrymore started drinking at 9, tried cocaine at 12, and the first time she went to rehab, she was 13. Corey Haim was abused on movie sets and for years suffered from his drug addiction. He died at 38 of pneumonia. His friend Corey Feldman was silenced when he called out pedophiles in Hollywood that molested them both. Macaulay Culkin was beaten by his father and emancipated himself from his parents at age 14 to prevent them from stealing his money. Jake Lloyd was horribly bullied by Star Wars fans and his own classmates and ended up in a psychiatric institution. Lindsay Lohan's parents publicly fought over her money. She took drugs, developed an eating disorder, and had several run-ins with the law. And Amanda Bynes had a very public mental breakdown. Child stars have been around pretty much since movies existed, but many pay a huge price for fame and fortune. Drake Bell is the latest example in this depressing list. Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV explored the horrible things that went on behind the scenes at Nickelodeon in the 90s and early 2000s. Racism, sexism, body shaming, but above all of this, there were even disturbing allegations about child abuse. And in this documentary, Drake Bell revealed that he was also sexually assaulted by voice coach Brian Peck when he was 15 years old.
I somehow ended up back at Brian's house. And it just got worse and worse and worse.
Back then, the case went to court with the name of the victim being kept a secret, and Peck was sentenced to 16 months in prison. And I seriously wonder, are there any child stars who have come out of this unharmed? Is it even possible? I mean, sure, the Olsen twins have made a fortune and then left Hollywood to make themselves a name in fashion. After Mary-Kate developed an eating disorder and grown men were eagerly waiting for their 18th birthday because then they would be legal. Jodie Foster has stood in front of the camera since she was 3 years old, and she's still a very successful actress today. After John Hinckley, who was obsessed with her, shot former President Ronald Reagan to impress her. And the stars of the Harry Potter movies seem to do well. After Daniel Radcliffe developed an alcohol problem and paparazzi tried to shoot pictures up Emma Watson's dress. Zendaya is another example. She apparently managed to handle her early fame pretty good, but it still had an effect on her. In an interview, she recently said that she's not sure how much of a choice she's actually had when it comes to her starting out so young. She was thrust in a very adult position, becoming the breadwinner of her family very early, and she felt that she needed to be this perfect being and live up to all expectations. But that's another thing. Child stars inevitably grow up, and Zendaya too hopes that now people buy her at her own age. So, is there a solution? Should we just ban children from acting? That could be kind of difficult, like with movies about children or families. And there are also those kids who enjoy acting, like Jodie Sweetin, who at 5 years old got the role of Stephanie in Full House.
How rude.
And she loved it.
Yes, there are some things that come along with being famous at a young age. But my overall experience was so wonderful and positive. I never experienced any abuse. My parents always were like, if this isn't what you love, we're not gonna make you do it.
Now, after Full House ended, she also stumbled into drugs and alcohol. But I have no idea whether this has anything to do with her being a child star or trying to cope with a normal life. I mean, maybe, but even if, today she's been sober for over a decade. But her point about how her parents never forced her is an important one, because there are more than enough parents who try to live out their dreams through their children.
Brooke's sort of like a work of art. I think the world should enjoy Brooke and view her.
But it's also parents who already are famous who still push their children into the limelight. Like, for example, Will Smith, who couldn't understand when his daughter, who had a huge hit in 2010, wanted to quit.
Willow hit me hard. She's 9 years old with a top 10 single. She's on the Justin Bieber tour. She comes off stage. I'm like, yeah, baby, that was great. And she was like, oh, daddy, I'm ready to go home. And I was like, well, you can't be finished, babe. You know, you promised Mr. Jay-Z that, you know, you were going to do the 30 days. And she was like, no, daddy, you promised Mr. Jay-Z. She went to her room that night, I went to my room. She comes down that morning, she shaved her head bald in the middle of her Whip My Hair tour.
This sounds like a nice little anecdote, but Willow was just 9 years old, and when she today talks about it, it hits a little different.
I definitely had to forgive you and Daddy. It was mostly Daddy, because he was so, like, harsh. It was like a couple years, honestly, trying to regain trust. I felt guilty because I was like, everyone is trying to make me better, trying to make my dream.
She also said that to cope with the pressures of being famous, she started to self-harm. And this is just incredibly sad. But what's even worse is that she's far from the only example. Jennette McCurdy became famous as Sam in iCarly, but she was controlled, dragged to auditions, and driven into an eating disorder by her own mother. And after her death, she wrote a book with the very telling title, I'm Glad My Mother Died.
You pull back the curtain on child stardom. It is not a pretty picture.
Not as I see it, no. You're in an adult's world. I think my mom encouraged and conditioned my anorexia because both she thought that it would in some ways help my career, and also because it served her goal of keeping me young and under her influence. She lived vicariously through me.
Looking back today, she thinks nobody should have their kid act professionally, which is exactly what ex-Malcolm in the Middle star Frankie Muniz said.
I would never let my kid go into business. And not that I had a negative experience, because to be honest, my experience was 100% positive. But I know so many people that had such insanely negative experiences. I just think it's an ugly world in general. I never cared about rejection, but there's a ton of rejection.
And that's another point. There is so much rejection and expectations, not only when it comes to jobs, but today more so than ever with social media. Everyone can scream their opinions about you into the world. There is constant attention, constant comments, constant criticism. And by the way, it's also pretty sick how we glorify or insult adult celebrities. But doing it to children is a whole other level. Mara Wilson, who became famous as the little girl in Mrs. Doubtfire and Matilda, and soon discovered that she was photoshopped into CP, recently said in an interview, I think you can be a healthy child who acts, but I don't think you can be a completely healthy child star. You can't be world famous without it affecting you. And that is just it.
I stopped being a kid who was an actor and I became a child star. And that fundamentally changed my life.
So why the hell do we still have child stars? I mean, sure, if children like them, that isn't the problem. But as soon as adults get involved, it can very quickly become one. That's exactly why, for example, the names of the children who voice Bluey and Bingo have remained secret to protect them and their privacy. That's of course much easier done with a cartoon. But still, everyone should take note of this. Because yes, child predators must disappear from movie sets and any other place on this earth. And yes, parents must be there for their children. But we as fans or viewers also have to take a hard look at ourselves. Some children might be incredibly talented and they deserve praise for it. But we can't forget that these are just children who maybe sometimes like to act. And that is how we should look at it.